What movie death scene is seared into your memory? Before we start with the video, comment your answers. Like, subscribe and turn on notification bell. Enjoy. That poor guy who gets his heart ripped out by Thuggees and sent into lava in Temple of Doom always got me as a kid. Still pretty memorable. The scene in Bone Tomahawk where they rip the guy in half. This fucking scene, I hate it that it haunts me and interrupts my thoughts every once in a while. I'd be thinking about work, my kids, planning stuff, wishbone scene, and my fucking day is ruined. When they crush Piggy in Lord of the Flies. I was probably too young to watch. Also, the scientist who gets killed in the elevator in Damien, The Omen 2. I remember when I read The Lord of the Flies, and I felt so bad for poor Simon. I can't find my glasses. I don't know why, but anytime a kid gets their glasses broken in a show movie, I shatter emotionally. In Silence of the Lambs when Hannibal gets a hold of the guard in his cage cell and starts biting his face. 9-year-old me was not ready for that, and I was less ready to hear my mom start laughing hysterically at the scene. I guess she just found it absurd. Was 9-year-old you ready for Buffalo Bill to talk about getting fucked in the mirror? When the shark kills Quint in Jaws. This is mine. Probably because I was 11 and watching it in a packed theater. The whole experience is still a vivid memory. That movie blew people away. I remember watching it as a kid when it first came out in a full cinema. Everyone jumped and gasped together and it was a great experience. My family was on holiday at a seaside city and I was scared of swimming the next day. Me too. That night I had visions of a shark crashing through my bedroom window. Robocop Buddy gets covered with toxic waste and then gets hit by a car and explodes like a water balloon. Edit syntax. Edit 2 Murphy's death was hard to watch for sure, poor bastard. But I could never get the vision of the windshield goo out of my head. There are some good ones in this thread, but I was honestly surprised to see this one so far down. One of the first movie scenes that traumatized me as a kid. Was way too young when I watched it. Although, I suppose it helped a lot of movie death scenes since have less impact. The only other that springs straight to mind as being too harrowing to watch would be Auburn Martell. Robocop 2 had a rather nasty one also, though not so graphic, when Cannabit just lifts the chick and there's a sickening crunch as she's crushed. Hereditary, the car crash. The way he just goes home and goes straight to bed. Chilling. The way he just lays there with his eyes open all night. I don't want to imagine what thoughts were spinning through his mind as he lay there for hours, then hearing his parents wake up but not knowing what to tell them, then hearing his mom go out to the car knowing what is waiting for her. That whole scene is so stressful on so many levels. His mom's shriek when she leaves the house haunts me to this day. Toni Collette got fucking robbed of an Oscar nom for that performance. Agreed. The scene at the dinner table is some of the best acting I have ever seen. She's exceptionally talented. The baby gorilla in the animated Tarzan. What the hell, Disney? That whole movie had a lot of death. Clayton's death at the end was really dark. Didn't notice the shadow of his hanging corpse as a kid, I was too focused on the machete. Also didn't notice that you can see Tarzan's parents' corpses. Tarzan's parents' corpses and little bloody paw prints. The Green Mile. The whole thing, even down to the damn mouse. That movie was the first that ever made me cry and broke through my depression. No film will ever overwrite that one. I don't think I've ever seen the movie, but I absolutely love the book. I purposely didn't watch the movie because I didn't want my brain's version of the story ruined after reading the book. But I cried so hard I nearly threw up just reading it. No question. The scene in Casino where Joe Pesci watches his brother get beaten to death with aluminum baseball bats. The pinging sound haunts me to this day. And that was a true story, right down to the dirt in the respiratory tract from being buried alive. Jesus. I know the film was based on a true story, but I didn't know that about the scene. Makes it so much worse. Thanks for the nightmare fuel fun fact. Haha. That scene probably isn't actually true. It was believed to be what happened when the movie was made, but in 2007, one of the mobsters responsible testified that the Spilatro brothers were actually beaten to death off-site and were just buried in the cornfield. It's pretty unlikely that either of them were actually alive when they were buried. I don't think that there's any real evidence other than Nicholas Calabrese's testimony, so I guess he could be lying, But that's a weirdly specific and pointless thing to lie about, given the context of everything else that he copped to during his plea deal. It's also very possible that he thought they were dead. It's not like they would have brought in a doctor to determine time of death. You beat a guy till he stops moving, throw him in a trunk, and then dump him in a hole. No one is gonna monitor for shallow breaths. Hey dear Vinny, I think this guy's here has a pulse. Do you think we should maybe check his chart for one of them pre-existing conditions? Satine's death in Moulin Rouge. Right after she got back together with her love, they sing this awesome love song, and she dies as the curtain goes down. Ewan McGregor breaks my heart with that sobbing. The sounds Ewan McGregor makes in that scene are just indescribable. Such a beautiful piece of acting. Wait, so you're telling me that Ewan McGregor watches his love, who is named Satine, die as they are reunited, and this isn't Star Wars? Curb stomp from American History X, the sound of the teeth on the curb. I never understood what a curb stomp really was until that moment. It stuck my head too. The last scene of Danny Vineyard being shot in the toilet was also very disturbing. American History X is one of the few movies that's ever made me cry. Danny had just gotten out, he had his whole life ahead of him. That's the thing that makes Danny's death so upsetting too, he was just reformed the night before. Whether or not he would learn from his prejudices, he was still going to be killed the next day. Bridge to Terabithia. Thanks for killing me inside. When I was in high school, a friendly, charismatic classmate and his little brother were both killed in a car accident on their way to school. The whole town was in mourning, and it was my first time dealing with the death of someone my own age, someone who I'd had classes with, the friendly class clown who everyone liked. I was not dealing with it well, and my mom wanted to help, so she decided that we'd rent a cute movie, something to take my mind off of it. I'd never read The Bridge to Terabithia, neither had she. We had no clue what it was about, other than knowing it involved fun fantasy stuff. The ending of that movie sucker punched me so hard. We were in shock, and I remember crying so hard at the ending, it felt like I couldn't breathe. Looking back, the poor choice is darkly comedic in a "how could this week possibly get any worse" kind of way, but at the time it was horrifying. Probably this guy in Black Hawk Down, so he was in this convoy truck and it got blown up by an RPG. Then one of the soldiers picked up his hand, then saw the guy dying with half his body blown off. His last words. "Tell my girls I'll be okay." I saw that scene when I was a kid and it never left my head. For me it was CPL Jamie Smith bleeding out while he bled out because they couldn't clamp his leg artery. 1917, when Lance Corporal Blake gets stabbed by the enemy he was trying to help after a plane crash. And then his best friend has to watch him bleed out and later tell Blake's brother about his death. Awful. That scene is incredible. You can see his face starting to get flush from the blood leaving his body. At the end it's stark white. I just watched this movie like 2 weeks ago. Holy cow, what a ride. How do you even make an actor go pale like that? He was method acting, they actually stabbed him and watched him bleed out. Incredible performance and dedication to the role. In Titanic, the man plummeting from the sinking ship into the icy waters, only to have his fall interrupted by still, metal propellers. That did put a hell of a spin on him for the rest of the descent into the water. Is this the guy that falls and then spins? I remember seeing this back in '97, and the theater collapsed with laughter at that part, despite how quiet and serious everything was. My kids loved Titanic, but always used to piss themselves at that scene and rewind to watch it several times. Ghost ship. A cable sweeps through a dance floor so fast and sharp it slices people in half, this will always be in my memory. Wasn't the captain dancing with a little girl and she watches as his head falls apart? He kind of gets sliced diagonally and she is too short to get cut by the cable. I watched this movie a bunch of times, I'm not sure why. Edit. I may be misremembering. I do think one of them got the head slice, but now I'm questioning if it was the captain. Ask my dad of a synopsis of any movie and he says, they all die, everybody dies. Doesn't matter what the movie is about. I was so happy when I finally got him to watch Ghost Ship. Best opening scene ever. Such a shame that the rest of the movie pales in comparison. John Coffey from The Green Mile. Don't put me in the dark, I's afraid of the dark. That in the Cajun guy whose head lights up in the chair. Whoa. He's cooking now. That guy was such a convincing piece of shit I can't think of him in any other role.